I'm Jacob, a 29-year-old technical sergeant in the U.S. Air Force, and my life has been a roller coaster of duty, heartbreak, and resilience. I grew up on a small ranch just outside Austin, Texas, with my dad, a retired Air Force veteran, and my mom, who worked as a nurse. Ranch life taught me discipline, and my dad taught me how to face life head-on, no matter how tough it gets. Joining the Air Force felt like carrying on a family legacy. I started as an avionics systems technician, fixing the aircraft that kept us in the fight. Eventually, I transitioned to a sniper role, which is how I met Ryan Carter. Ryan isn't just my partner, he's like a brother to me. We've been through deployments, firefights, and quiet nights on watch, talking about everything from the stars to our messed-up love lives. Speaking of love, I thought I had it all when I married Olivia. We met in San Diego during a weekend leave before my first deployment. She was warm, funny, and had this way of making life feel less heavy. We got married quickly, something common among military couples. Everything felt right, especially after we had our son, Liam. That boy is my world. But life doesn't care about your plans. While I was deployed in Iraq, I started noticing little changes in Olivia. Calls became less frequent, texts felt colder. At first, I chalked it up to the stress of raising Liam alone, but my gut told me something wasn't right. One day, I got an email from a buddy back home, Mike, who worked as a police officer. He told me he'd seen Olivia out with another guy, laughing, holding hands, and looking way too comfortable. My heart dropped into my boots. I couldn't confront her while deployed, so I did what any soldier would, I started gathering intel, quietly and methodically. I wanted the truth, no matter how much it hurt. I kept my suspicions to myself during that deployment. The mission had to come first, and my team depended on me to keep my head straight. But every night, lying on my cot, I couldn't shake the unease. Mike wasn't the kind of guy to jump to conclusions. If he said he saw something, there was a good chance it was real. When I finally got back stateside, I didn't confront Olivia right away. Instead, I decided to dig deeper. I combed through our phone records and noticed unfamiliar numbers popping up a lot, mostly during the times I'd been calling but couldn't get through. My heart sank further with every page of the bill. I told myself maybe it was innocent, that it could have been a friend, but my instinct said otherwise. One evening, I told Olivia I was heading to the base for some paperwork, but I drove to Mike's house instead. He wasn't just a friend, he was a cop. I asked him for advice, and he hesitated before pulling out a file. It had photos of Olivia with some guy, holding hands at a park, leaning in close at a coffee shop. One picture was of them kissing outside our house. I couldn't breathe. I felt like my chest was caving in, but I kept my composure. Mike put a hand on my shoulder and said, "Jacob, I didn't want to be the one to tell you, but you deserve to know." I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at those pictures. The betrayal hit me like a freight train. I thought of Liam, how much I'd been sacrificing for our family while Olivia was doing this. When I got home that night, Olivia acted like nothing was wrong, asking if I wanted spaghetti for dinner. I stared at her for a second too long, and she noticed. "Jacob, is everything okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I lied, "just tired." I didn't know how to confront her yet. All I knew was I needed to protect Liam. Whatever came next, I couldn't let this destroy his life too. The pictures burned a hole in my mind for days. I couldn't focus at work, couldn't sleep, couldn't even look at Olivia without feeling like I was going to explode. But I had to play it cool for Liam. He didn't deserve to see his parents fighting or, worse, falling apart. Finally, one Friday night after putting Liam to bed, I decided it was time. Olivia was in the living room, scrolling on her phone, looking as relaxed as ever. I sat down across from her, holding the folder Mike had given me. My hands felt like they weighed 100 pounds. Olivia, we need to talk, I said, my voice steady though I felt anything but. She glanced up, frowning. What's wrong? I slid the folder across the coffee table. Open it. Her face paled the second she saw the photos. She didn't even try to deny it. Instead, she sighed, set the folder down, and looked at me with this fake tired expression. Jacob, I was going to tell you, she started. Tell me what, Olivia? That you've been cheating on me while I was halfway around the world? My voice cracked. That you've been lying to my face, to Liam's face, every single day? She had the audacity to roll her eyes. I didn't plan for this to happen, okay? It's not like I wanted to hurt you. You didn't plan this? I stood up, trying to keep my voice low so I wouldn't wake Liam. You let this guy into our house while I was deployed, risking my life. You were here with him. How is that not planned? She started crying then, but it wasn't the kind of crying that made me feel sorry for her. It felt fake, like she was just trying to make herself the victim. You don't understand how hard it is being alone, Jacob. You're always gone, and I'm here by myself raising Liam. Don't you dare use Liam as an excuse for what you did, I snapped. He deserves better than this. I deserve better than this. Her tears stopped instantly, and her face twisted into something cold. Maybe if you weren't married to your job, this wouldn't have happened. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was blaming me after everything I'd done to provide for our family. She had the nerve to turn this around on me. I felt my fists clenching at my sides, and I had to force myself to breathe. Who is he? I demanded. I want his name. She hesitated, her eyes darting away. It doesn't matter. It matters to me. Who is he? She finally spat out his name. His name is Daniel. He's just a coworker. It's not serious. Not serious? Like that made it better. Like it wasn't serious to bring another man into our lives and risk everything we built. You need to leave, I said, my voice shaking with anger. Pack your things and go. You can stay with this Daniel for all I care, but you're not staying here. Her eyes widened in shock. Jacob, don't do this. Think about Liam. I am thinking about Liam, and that's exactly why you need to go. She tried to argue, but I wasn't listening anymore. I walked out of the room and straight into Liam's. I sat by his bed, watching him sleep, my heart breaking for the life I thought we had. Olivia didn't leave that night. I should have known she wouldn't. She's stubborn like that, always needing to have the last word. Instead, she slept in the guest room, or at least that's where she stayed after I locked myself in Liam's room. I didn't sleep much, just sat there listening to his steady breathing and wondering how the hell my life had come to this. The next morning, I found Olivia in the kitchen making breakfast like nothing had happened. She even had the nerve to smile at me. Pancakes, she asked, like we were just another happy family. I ignored her and poured myself a cup of coffee. My silence must have gotten to her because she finally put the spatula down and sighed. We need to talk about this, she said. No, Olivia, you need to talk, I replied, my voice low but firm. I've said everything I need to say. I want you out of the house. She crossed her arms, leaning against the counter. I'm not going anywhere, Jacob. This is my home too, and I'm not leaving Liam. That hit me like a gut punch. She knew how much Liam meant to me, and she was using him as leverage. Typical. You think you're staying here after everything you've done? I asked, trying to keep my temper in check. Do you even hear yourself? I made a mistake, okay, she shot back. But this is still my family, and I'm not going to just walk away. I laughed bitterly. Your family? You didn't care about your family when you brought Daniel into our house. Her face flushed, but she didn't say anything. For the first time, she looked genuinely ashamed, but it was too little, too late. "I'll go," I said after a long silence. "I'll pack a bag and stay on base until I figure out what to do next. But this isn't over, Olivia. We're going to court, and I'm going to fight for Liam." Her eyes widened. "Court? Jacob, come on, don't do this." "You did this, Olivia," I said, my voice cold. "Not me. I spent the rest of the day packing a bag and making arrangements to stay in the barracks. I didn't want to leave Liam, but I couldn't stand to be in that house with her. Before I left, I sat Liam down in the living room. "Buddy," I said, keeping my voice calm, "Daddy has to go away for a little while. I'll still see you all the time, okay? This doesn't change how much I love you." Liam looked confused but nodded. He was too young to understand what was happening, and I wasn't about to explain it to him. That was a conversation for another day, one I dreaded with every fiber of my being. When I walked out the door, Olivia didn't try to stop me. She just stood there, holding Liam's hand, watching me go. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, harder than any deployment, any firefight, anything. As I drove to the base, I told myself one thing over and over: this isn't the end. I'll fight for Liam. I'll fight for what's right, and no matter what, I won't let this break me. Living on base felt strange. I was surrounded by people I trusted my life with, but for the first time, I felt completely alone. My bunk was cold, the silence was deafening, and the empty space where my family used to be weighed on me. Every time I thought about Liam, my chest felt tight. I'd gone from seeing him every day to wondering what he was doing, whether he was okay, whether Olivia was poisoning him against me. The first few days were a blur. I buried myself in work, pulling extra shifts and volunteering for tasks nobody else wanted, anything to keep my mind off the chaos waiting for me back home. But the distraction didn't last long. On the fourth night, I got a text from Olivia: "We need to talk. For Liam's sake." I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. "What do you want, Olivia?" The 3 dots popped up, then disappeared, then came back. Finally, her response came through: "We can't keep doing this. Liam doesn't understand why you're not here. He misses you." I wanted to scream. Of course Liam missed me. I missed him too, more than I could put into words. But the thought of sitting across from Olivia again, hearing her excuses, her lies, made my blood boil. Still, she was right about one thing: we couldn't keep doing this. For Liam's sake, we had to figure something out. I agreed to meet her the next day at a neutral spot, Mike's house. I trusted Mike to keep things civil if Olivia tried to pull anything. When she showed up, she looked different, tired, guilty. But I wasn't about to let that soften me. We sat across from each other in Mike's small living room, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. "I'm not here to fight," Olivia started. "I just want to figure out how we move forward." "Forward?" I said, my voice sharp. "You think there's a forward after what you did?" Her eyes flicked to Mike, who stayed quiet, giving us space to talk. "I know I messed up, Jacob, but we have to think about Liam. He needs both of us." I leaned forward, my elbows on my knees. "You don't get to play the victim here, Olivia. You made your choices. Now you have to deal with the consequences." She nodded, biting her lip. "I know. But I'm not leaving Liam. He needs his mom. And he needs a dad who isn't being lied to every day," I shot back. "So here's what's going to happen: I'm filing for divorce, and I'm going for custody." Her jaw dropped. "You can't be serious, Jacob. You're always deployed. How can you take care of him full-time?" "I'll figure it out," I said. "I'll get help. But I'm not letting him grow up in a house where this kind of thing is okay." She tried to argue, but Mike cut in, his voice calm but firm. Olivia, you need to think long and hard about how you want this to go. If Jacob's willing to go to court, you're looking at a long, ugly fight. Is that what you want for Liam? Her face crumpled, and for a moment, I thought she might cry. But instead, she nodded. No, I don't want that. Good, Mike said. Then maybe it's time to start being honest with Jacob, with yourself, and with Liam. Olivia didn't say anything after that. She just grabbed her purse and left, her heels clicking against the floor. Mike looked at me once she was gone. You okay, man? No, I admitted. But I will be. After that meeting, I knew there was no turning back. The next morning, I scheduled a consultation with a divorce lawyer. Her name was Rachel, and from the second I walked into her office, I knew she meant business. She greeted me with a firm handshake, no fake sympathy, and got straight to work. So, Rachel said, flipping open a notebook, you want custody of your son. Let's start with what you've got against her. I handed her the file Mike had given me, the pictures, phone records, and a timeline I'd pieced together from everything I knew. Rachel skimmed through it, nodding occasionally. This is solid, she said. Courts don't like infidelity, especially when kids are involved. But be prepared, it's not going to be easy. Family courts tend to favor mothers unless there's clear evidence she's unfit. She's not unfit, I admitted. She's a good mom when she's not sneaking around with Daniel. Rachel nodded. That's fair. But if you want primary custody, we need to focus on what's best for Liam: stability, education, emotional well-being. Are you ready to show the court you can provide that? I thought about it, about my deployments, the late nights, the unpredictability of military life. Could I really give Liam what he needed? The doubt must have shown on my face because Rachel leaned forward, her expression softening just a little. Look, Jacob, you don't have to have all the answers right now. But if you're serious about this, you'll need to make changes: more time at home, a solid support system. The court needs to see you're committed. I am, I said firmly. I'll do whatever it takes. Over the next few weeks, Rachel helped me build my case. I gathered character references from colleagues and neighbors, documented every interaction I had with Liam, and even started looking into off-base housing. Meanwhile, Olivia was surprisingly cooperative, or maybe just resigned. She agreed to mediation instead of dragging things straight to court, which felt like a small victory. Mediation sessions were tense but civil. We sat across from each other in a small room with a mediator, a middle-aged woman with a soothing voice who probably dealt with this kind of thing daily. Let's start with custody, the mediator said. What are your goals? I want primary custody, I said immediately. I'm willing to work with Olivia on visitation, but Liam's best interests come first. Olivia stiffened but didn't argue. I want shared custody, she said. Liam needs both of us. Shared custody isn't off the table, the mediator said, scribbling notes. But we need to establish a schedule that works for everyone. Jacob, given your military commitments, how do you plan to handle day-to-day parenting? I explained my plans: transferring to a position with fewer deployments, moving closer to family who could help with Liam, and setting up a routine that would keep him stable. Olivia raised her eyebrows but didn't say much. I'm not trying to take him away from you, Olivia, I added, my voice steady. But I can't just sit back and let him grow up in a house where this kind of behavior is excused. Her face flushed. I made a mistake, Jacob. That doesn't mean I'm a bad mother. No, it doesn't, I said. But it does mean Liam deserves better. The mediator intervened before the conversation could spiral, redirecting us to more practical matters: schooling, holidays, and financial responsibilities. By the end of the session, we had a rough draft of a custody agreement. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. As we left the building, Olivia stopped me in the parking lot. "Jacob," she said quietly, "I'm sorry." I looked at her, searching for any sign of the woman I'd fallen in love with years ago, but all I saw was someone I didn't recognize anymore. "Sorry doesn't fix this," I replied. "But for Liam's sake, I hope you mean it." She nodded, tears brimming in her eyes, and I walked away, determined not to look back. Life after mediation wasn't easy, but it felt like a step in the right direction. The custody agreement we drafted gave me weekends and part of the week with Liam, while Olivia had the rest. It wasn't ideal, but it gave me a foothold to build from. For the first time in years, I found myself in a routine that didn't revolve around deployments or Olivia. I moved into a small 2-bedroom house off base, close enough to Liam's school to be involved. It wasn't much, but it was ours. I made sure his room was perfect: new bed, superhero posters, and a bookshelf stocked with all his favorites. When he saw it for the first time, his face lit up, and for a moment, the weight of everything felt worth it. Olivia and I kept our interactions brief and to the point. Drop-offs and pickups were cordial but cold. We had a shared calendar for Liam's school events, doctor's appointments, and anything else he needed. Everything about our communication was clinical: texts and emails only, no unnecessary small talk. It hurt at first, but eventually, it became a relief. The less I saw her, the easier it was to heal. Liam adapted better than I expected. Kids are resilient like that. He didn't ask a lot of questions, just went with the flow, happy to have time with both his parents. But every now and then, he'd catch me off guard. "Daddy," he said one night as I was tucking him in, "why don't you and Mommy live together anymore?" I froze, my hand hovering over his blanket. "That's a big question, buddy," I said, buying myself a moment. "You know how sometimes grown-ups don't get along. That's kind of what happened with me and Mommy." "Are you mad at her?" he asked, his wide eyes looking up at me. "No," I lied. "We just decided it's better this way. But we both love you more than anything, and that'll never change. Okay?" He nodded, satisfied for now, and I kissed his forehead before turning out the light. As I sat on the couch later, staring at the blank TV screen, I couldn't shake the guilt. I hated that he had to grow up with questions like that, hated that I couldn't protect him from the fallout of Olivia's choices. One day, about a month after I moved out, I got a call from Ryan, my partner from the sniper team. We kept in touch since my deployment, but this call felt different, urgent. "Jacob," he said without preamble, "you doing okay?" "Yeah," I said cautiously. "Why?" "Because I heard about Olivia," he said, his voice low. "Word gets around, man." I sighed, running a hand through my hair. "Yeah, well, it's a mess, but I'm dealing with it." "Well, if you need anything, you know where to find me," he said. "And Jacob, don't let this break you. You're stronger than that." His words stuck with me. Ryan wasn't the kind of guy to get emotional or offer pep talks, so hearing that from him hit hard. It reminded me that I wasn't alone, that I had people in my corner even when it felt like the world was against me. The weeks turned into months, and slowly, I started to feel like myself again. I focused on being the best dad I could be for Liam, coaching his little league team, helping with homework, and making sure he felt loved every single day. I also threw myself into work, taking on projects that kept me busy and distracted. One day, during a quiet moment on base, I found myself scrolling through old pictures on my phone. There was one of Olivia and Liam at a park, both of them laughing, her head thrown back with that carefree smile I used to love. My chest tightened, but instead of feeling anger or heartbreak, I felt nothing. It hit me then, I was moving on. Slowly, painfully, but I was moving on. By the time the holidays rolled around, I had settled into my new life. Liam split his time between Olivia's house and mine, and we were starting to find a rhythm. For Thanksgiving, he stayed with me, and we drove out to my parents' ranch in Texas. It was Liam's first trip there since he was a toddler, and seeing him run around the same fields I grew up in felt like a piece of my old life had come full circle. My dad, ever the stoic Air Force veteran, gave me a pat on the back when we arrived. "Good to have you home, son," he said simply. My mom fussed over Liam, piling his plate high with mashed potatoes and homemade pie. It was exactly the kind of peace I needed after the chaos of the past year. But even with the comfort of home, I couldn't escape the memories of Olivia. I found myself wondering if she was thinking about us, about what she'd lost. A small part of me hoped she was miserable, but another part, the part that still wanted to hold on to the good times, hoped she'd at least learned something. After Liam fell asleep that night, I sat out on the porch with my dad, the Texas sky sprawling above us. "You doing okay, Jacob?" he asked, breaking the quiet. "Yeah," I said after a moment. "It's been rough, but I'm getting there." He nodded, staring out at the horizon. "You know, when I got back from Annam, I didn't know how to deal with anything. Your mom got me through it. But if she hadn't been there," he trailed off, his meaning clear. "It's not the same, Dad," I said, shaking my head. "Olivia, she didn't stick by me. She's the reason everything's falling apart. And you're the reason it's still standing," he countered. "Don't forget that." Christmas was next, and I'll be honest, it was bittersweet. Liam spent the morning with Olivia, but he came over in the afternoon, dragging a bright red sled behind him. "Mom said you could take me sledding," he announced, grinning ear to ear. For a second, I felt a flicker of gratitude toward Olivia. It didn't erase what she'd done, but at least she wasn't making things harder for Liam. We spent the rest of the day at a nearby hill, racing down the slopes and laughing until our faces were frozen. That night, as I tucked Liam into bed, he hugged me tight and whispered, "This was the best Christmas ever, Daddy." Hearing those words made everything else fade away. In that moment, it didn't matter that my marriage had fallen apart or that I was still piecing my life together. All that mattered was Liam and the fact that, despite everything, he was happy. The new year brought new challenges and new opportunities. At work, I was offered a position as an instructor, training new recruits in marksmanship. It was a step away from deployment, which meant more stability for Liam. I jumped at the chance, even though part of me missed the field. But being there for my son was more important than anything else. It was around that time that Ryan called me again. "Hey, Jacob," he said, "we're hosting a barbecue this weekend. You should come by." I hesitated. Socializing wasn't exactly at the top of my to-do list, but Ryan was persistent. "Bring Liam," he added. "It's kid-friendly." So I went, and that's where I met Sophia. When Liam and I showed up at Ryan's barbecue, I wasn't expecting much, just burgers, beers, and a chance for Liam to play with other kids while I pretended to enjoy small talk. But life has a funny way of surprising you when you least expect it. Sophia wasn't the first person I noticed that day, but she was the one who stood out. She was at the grill, flipping burgers like she'd been running cookouts her whole life, tall, athletic, with a confident smile that somehow managed to be both warm and intimidating. Her Air Force uniform might have been swapped for jeans and a t-shirt, but the way she carried herself screamed military through and through. "Jacob, this is Sophia," Ryan said, introducing us when I wandered over to grab a plate. "She's in logistics, just transferred to the base." "Nice to meet you," she said, holding out a hand. Her grip was firm, her gaze steady. "You too," I replied, caught off guard by how at ease she seemed. I wasn't exactly in the mood to meet new people, but there was something about her energy that made it hard to retreat back into my shell. As the afternoon went on, I found myself drawn to her. We ended up sitting at the same table, trading stories about deployments, bad MREs, and the quirks of military life. She laughed easily, but there was a sharpness to her humor, a wit that kept me on my toes. When she talked about her job, her face lit up with a passion that reminded me of how I used to feel about mine. Liam seems like a great kid, she said at one point, nodding toward where he was playing tag with the other kids. Yeah, I said, watching him with a mix of pride and guilt. He's my whole world. Just trying to figure out how to do right by him, you know? Sophia gave me a look that felt like she saw right through me. Sounds like you're doing fine, Jacob. Better than fine. Her words stuck with me. I hadn't realized how much I needed to hear that until she said it. By the end of the barbecue, Liam was practically falling asleep on his feet. As I loaded him into the truck, Sophia walked over, her hands tucked into her pockets. Hey, she said, hesitating for the first time all day, if you ever need someone to talk to, or just a break from everything, give me a call. She handed me a piece of paper with her number on it. I glanced at it, then back at her. Thanks, I said, not entirely sure what to make of the gesture. As I drove home, Liam snoring softly in the back seat, I couldn't stop thinking about Sophia. There was something about her that felt different, like maybe, just maybe, she could be the start of something new. But I wasn't ready for that yet, not entirely. My focus was still on Liam, on rebuilding my life one piece at a time. Still, for the first time in a long time, I felt a flicker of hope. And that was something. For a few weeks after the barbecue, I didn't do much about Sophia's number. I kept it tucked in my wallet, almost like a reminder that maybe life wasn't entirely done with me yet. But between work, Liam, and navigating the mess of co-parenting with Olivia, I barely had time to think about anything else. That didn't mean Sophia was far from my mind. I'd catch myself wondering what she was doing or replaying bits of our conversation. There was a steadiness to her, a quiet confidence that lingered long after we talked. It felt good in a way I wasn't used to anymore. One evening after putting Liam to bed, I found myself staring at that piece of paper. Before I could overthink it, I grabbed my phone and sent a simple text, "Hey, it's Jacob. Thanks again for the barbecue. Hope you're doing well." I didn't expect a reply so soon, but my phone buzzed within minutes. "Hey, Jacob. Glad you reached out. You and Liam doing okay?" That opened the door. We texted back and forth for a while, keeping it light, work, Liam's antics, random jokes. By the end of the conversation, she'd convinced me to meet her for coffee the following weekend. Just two people talking, she'd said. No pressure. The coffee shop was a cozy little place just off base called the Rusty Bean. It had mismatched furniture, chalkboard menus, and the kind of laid-back vibe where no one was in a rush. When Sophia walked in, she was all smiles, her hair pulled back in a ponytail and her posture as straight as ever. She waved at me before sliding into the seat across from mine. "Glad you didn't bail," she said with a grin. "I thought about it," I admitted, half joking. We talked for hours about everything and nothing. She told me about her family, how she grew up bouncing around as a military brat. I told her about the ranch in Texas, about my dad and the lessons he drilled into me. When the conversation shifted to Liam, I didn't hold back. For the first time in months, I found myself talking openly about Olivia, the betrayal, the custody battle. Sophia listened without interrupting, her expression thoughtful. When I finally stopped, she leaned forward, her elbows on the table. "You've been through a lot, Jacob," she said. "But you're still standing. That says something." Her words hit me harder than I expected. I'd spent so much time feeling like I was barely keeping it together that hearing someone say I was doing okay felt like a lifeline. After that, Sophia and I started talking more. Coffee turned into the occasional dinner, and dinner turned into her stopping by the house to hang out with Liam and me. She had this natural way with him, patient but firm, playful but not overbearing. He took to her almost immediately, which only made me like her more. Still, I was cautious. I wasn't ready to dive into anything serious, not with everything else going on. Sophia seemed to understand that, never pushing, never expecting more than I could give. She was just there, a steady presence in a life that had been anything but steady for a long time. One night after Liam had gone to bed, we sat on the porch sipping coffee and watching the stars. It was quiet, the kind of peaceful quiet I hadn't felt in years. "I don't know how you do it," I said suddenly, breaking the silence. "Do what?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "Stay so solid," I said, gesturing vaguely. "You make it look easy." She laughed softly, shaking her head. "Trust me, it's not easy. I've had my share of chaos too. But I guess I learned a long time ago that the only way out is through." Her words stayed with me long after she left that night. Maybe she was right. Maybe the only way to rebuild my life was to keep pushing forward, one step at a time. And maybe, just maybe, Sophia was meant to be part of that journey. As things with Sophia grew closer, I started to feel something I hadn't in a long time: hope. It was strange, almost uncomfortable, like my heart didn't know what to do with itself. But at the same time, I couldn't shake the nagging fear that it was too soon, that maybe I wasn't ready for this kind of connection. One day while I was dropping Liam off at Olivia's, that fear came crashing back. She met me at the door, looking more composed than I'd seen her in months. It was unsettling, like she had something to say but didn't know how to start. "Can we talk for a second?" she asked as Liam ran inside to grab his favorite toy. I hesitated. "What is it, Olivia?" Her eyes darted to the ground before meeting mine. "I've been thinking about us, about everything that's happened." I folded my arms, and she sighed, running a hand through her hair. "I messed up, Jacob. I know that. But I've been trying to figure out if there's a way to fix things, for Liam's sake." I blinked, caught completely off guard. "Fix things? Olivia, we're already halfway through a divorce." "I know," she said quickly. "But I don't want Liam to grow up in a broken home. I thought maybe we could try again, start over." Her words hung in the air like a storm cloud. For a split second, the idea of having my family back tempted me. But then the reality of what she'd done hit me like a hammer: the lies, the betrayal, the nights I'd spent wondering if my son's laughter had been built on a foundation of deceit. "I can't," I said, shaking my head. "I can't go back to that, Olivia. It's not just about Liam. It's about trust, and you broke it." Her face crumpled, and for a moment, I thought she might argue. But instead, she nodded, stepping back into the house as Liam came bounding out, toy in hand. "Bye, Daddy," he called as he climbed into my truck. "Bye, buddy," I said, giving him a wave as I drove away. I couldn't help but feel a strange mix of relief and sadness. Olivia's attempt to reconcile might have been genuine, but it was too little, too late. That night, I told Sophia about the conversation. We were sitting on the couch, Liam asleep in his room, and she listened quietly as I laid it all out. "So, how do you feel about it?" she asked when I finished. "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me wishes things could go back to the way they were, but another part knows that's not possible. Too much has happened." Sophia nodded, her expression thoughtful. "It's okay to feel conflicted, Jacob. You loved her once. That doesn't just disappear overnight." "I guess," I said, running a hand through my hair. "But I don't think I can ever trust her again. And without trust, what's the point?" She didn't say anything, just leaned over and placed her hand on mine. It was a small gesture, but it grounded me in a way I hadn't expected. "Whatever you decide," she said softly, "just make sure it's what's best for you and Liam. The rest will figure itself out." Her words stayed with me long after she left that night. For the first time, I realized I didn't have to have all the answers right away. I just had to keep moving forward, one step at a time. After Olivia's unexpected plea, I tried to focus on what really mattered: Liam, my job, and slowly finding my footing in this new life. But her words lingered in the back of my mind like a faint echo that refused to fade. The idea of fixing things was tempting, but every time I thought about it, I came back to the same conclusion: some things can't be undone. I didn't bring it up with Olivia again, and thankfully, she didn't push the issue. Our co-parenting arrangement stayed civil, though distant. Drop-offs were quick, texts were short, and any discussions about Liam were strictly about logistics. I could tell she wanted to say more, but I wasn't ready, and honestly, I didn't think I ever would be. Meanwhile, things with Sophia were progressing in a way that felt natural. There wasn't any pressure, no rushing, no big leaps. It felt good to have something grow naturally without the weight of expectation. One Saturday morning while Liam and I were playing catch in the yard, my phone buzzed. It was Olivia. "Can we meet?" her text read. I frowned, unsure of what she wanted now, but since Liam was busy, I agreed. We met at the Rusty Bean, the same coffee shop I'd been to with Sophia. Seeing Olivia there felt strange, like two parts of my life colliding. She started cautiously. "I know things between us are done, Jacob. I get that. But I don't want us to hate each other." I leaned back in my chair. "I don't hate you, Olivia. But things aren't going to go back to how they were." "I'm not asking for that," she said quickly. I want us to co-parent without all this tension. For Liam's sake." Her words surprised me. For the first time, it felt like she was accepting reality. "I want that too," I said honestly. "But it's going to take time." She nodded, and for once, we sat in silence that didn't feel heavy. It was a step, not forgiveness, not friendship, but a step towards something healthier for Liam. Life after that coffee shop meeting with Olivia felt a little lighter. We weren't friends, and we certainly weren't close, but the tension between us had eased. For Liam's sake, we were learning to coexist. Drop-offs became less awkward, and we even managed to have a few civil conversations about his schoolwork and extracurricular activities. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. Meanwhile, Sophia continued to be a steady presence in my life. She didn't push for more than I could give, and her patience was something I didn't take for granted. One weekend, she joined Liam and me for a trip to the Austin Zoo. It was Liam's idea, he'd been begging to see the lions for weeks. Sophia showed up with a backpack full of snacks and a camera slung over her shoulder. "Ready for an adventure?" she asked, grinning at Liam. He nodded eagerly, and off we went. The day was perfect. Liam dragged us from exhibit to exhibit, chattering excitedly about every animal. Sophia snapped pictures of him pointing at the lions and laughing at the monkeys. At one point, she crouched down next to him, explaining how cheetahs were the fastest land animals. I stood back, watching them, and felt a warmth in my chest that I hadn't felt in a long time. It wasn't just that Sophia was good with Liam, it was that she genuinely seemed to enjoy spending time with him. And he adored her. That evening, after we dropped Liam off at Olivia's, Sophia and I sat on my porch with cups of coffee. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. "Thanks for today," I said, breaking the comfortable silence. Liam had a blast. She smiled, leaning back in her chair. "I had fun too. He's a great kid, Jacob. You've done an amazing job with him." Her words meant more to me than she probably realized. "It hasn't been easy," I admitted. "But he's worth it." Sophia nodded, her expression thoughtful. "You know, it's okay to let yourself be happy. You've been through a lot, but you don't have to carry that weight forever." I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized how much she'd come to mean to me in such a short time. "I think I am happy," I said quietly. "Or at least, I'm getting there." She reached over, squeezing my hand. "Good. You deserve it." The months that followed felt like a slow but steady climb out of the darkness. Liam was thriving, splitting his time between Olivia's house and mine without the tension that had once defined our co-parenting. Olivia and I even managed to attend his school events together without it being awkward. It wasn't the life I'd imagined, but it was a good one, a life built on honesty and resilience. Sophia became a constant in our lives. She wasn't just my girlfriend, she was Liam's friend, his cheerleader, and sometimes his partner in crime. One Saturday morning, I walked into the kitchen to find them making pancakes together. Liam was standing on a stool, carefully pouring batter onto the griddle while Sophia guided his hand. "Daddy, look," he exclaimed, holding up a lopsided pancake. "I made a dinosaur." I laughed, ruffling his hair. "That's the best dinosaur I've ever seen." It was moments like those that made me realize how far we'd come. The pain of Olivia's betrayal was still there, but it didn't define me anymore. I had a new life, one filled with laughter, love, and the kind of peace I hadn't thought possible. Sophia and I took things slow, but every day with her felt like a step towards something real and lasting. One evening, after Liam had gone to bed, Sophia and I sat on the porch, watching the stars. The air was warm, and the crickets were chirping softly in the background. "Jacob," she said, breaking the silence, "I know this hasn't been easy for you. But I want you to know how proud I am of you. You've built something amazing here, for Liam, for yourself." I turned to her, my heart swelling with gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without you," I said honestly. "You've been my rock." She smiled, her eyes soft. "You've been mine too." We sat there for a while, just enjoying the quiet. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Life wasn't perfect, but it was good. And that was enough.